Hello, Salam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is a podcast where we discuss um, about Islam and Quran and mental health issues, how it's related. And in this podcast, I wanted to talk about Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, because 2 days ago on Sunday, the 9th of October, was the birthday of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a good opportunity to discuss some issues, because I know that there are many people from non-Muslims who don't know enough about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and maybe they wonder why are Muslims obsessed, or why do they love Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam so much? I mean, we've seen in various occasions stories, for example, the Salman Rushdie case, and people who've made cartoons about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and people get surprised why are Muslims so upset when people attack the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, people, they ask, why do Muslims regard Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with so much esteem? And why is there this love? So I wanted to discuss in this podcast a bit about who was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why is he special to Muslims? And what is the significance of his birthday as well? Because I mean, even for some Muslims, they maybe question the idea of why should we make this day special. So I will start by introducing who is this Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His name was Muhammad ibn Abdullah. His father was Abdullah, and his father passed away when he was a child, leaving him an orphan. And this is kind of significant because, you know, people, they have these ideas of orphans that, you know, they're like poor and they'll grow up dysfunctional or something like this. You know, I've seen people, they are kind of suspicious of orphans. But in Islam, in the Quran, orphans are the people who Allah takes care of. So we can see somehow that from the beginning there's something a bit different about this Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was orphaned from a young age, but his mother died when he was 6 years old. He was breastfed by several women, so he had some nursing mothers. He was brought up by his grandfather after his mother's death, and then he was taken by his uncle Abu Talib. He worked as a shepherd since he was a young man, but then he began to work as a merchant, and he was working for a woman called Khadija. And this woman, she was a 40-year-old widow. She'd been married maybe 2 or 3 times by that time, and she had children from these marriages. And what happened was, when he was working for this woman, Khadija, he was traveling to Sham, to the areas of Palestine and Syria and these kind of countries. And the person who traveled with him saw that some different things happened with him. There's like a cloud covering his head, and he seemed to be protected somehow. There's something strange about this person. And at the same time, when Khadija asked about the character of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, this person who worked with him described him to her as, you know, very trustworthy. He was very impressed by the behavior and dealings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him. He was not someone who cheated people. He did not lie. He did not cheat. And he dealt with people in a good way. And when this Khadija heard about the character and the dealings and the way he dealt with people, she sent a proposal of marriage to him through her friend. He was 25 years old, and in that time, that was late for an Arab man to get married. They would have been married before that time. So Khadija sent her friend to ask why he had not been married until now, and would he accept to marry a righteous woman, a rich woman from the Qurayshi tribe, from the same tribe as him. He was from the Qurayshi tribe as well. And he asked, who is this woman? And her friend told him that she is Khadija. And he accepted the marriage, and their uncle married them. And even though she was 15 years older than him and been married before, there was no disagreement in this marriage. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, married her because she was an upright woman, and she was known as the pure one in her tribe. So this also shows you the character of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that he looked past these material, unimportant things that most people are looking for. I mean, nowadays many people will just ask about someone's age and if they've been married before, and on these grounds refuse to marry someone, for example. They will not look that this is actually a very good woman, very good person. So in the beginning there's some differences from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him. He had the insights into these things, and he seemed to deal with people according to who they are. But anyway, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, he was said to receive the revelation when he was 40 years old, because he used to meditate in a cave called Mount Hira. And actually I thought this is an important subject to talk about, because so many people, the Orientalists and people who don't accept Islam, they try to attack Islam and attack Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, from this story. And they try to claim that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not actually see an angel, he did not actually receive a revelation, rather he was hallucinating, or he had an epileptic fit, or just he was in a meditative trance and he thought he saw something, and it was just a spiritual enlightenment or something like that. So I wanted to discuss what he said and what other people are interpreting from this, and what we can really understand, what really could have happened. So from the narration of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he said happened, what he told his followers is this. He, when he was in the cave of Hira, he said that he was meditating, which he often did, because he used to go to this cave and he used to sit in the cave and meditate and think about the problems of his society and the Quraysh, and to think about what could be the solutions to these issues. And he had different belief system. He was not someone who worshipped the idols that many of the other people were worshipping. Neither did his wife. There were people in that time who, we call them Hanif. They did not worship idols. They did not have a specific religion. They were not Christians or Jews or any religion, but they were just not worshipping the idols. So he was not involved in this, and he was more concerned with how to bring good or benefit society. And he would go to this Mount Hira and meditate there, or reflect on things. And Khadija, his wife, would bring him food and lead him to take time in the cave. So he says that one day he was visited by a being, and he said this being was so great that his presence just filled the whole horizon. So whenever he turned his head, he saw this being, and it had 6 wings, He had wings that covered the skies. It was so big. So anyway, in this cave, and this being visited him, and he was not able to turn away from him because this being was great in appearance, and he could not turn away from him. And he told him to read, and he replied that I cannot read, because this was true, and we know that Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, as I said, was brought up as an orphan, and he was a shepherd boy, and most of the people in his society did not read or write. So of course, someone from his background would not be reading and writing, and he could not read or write, and this is something that was known, that he himself and also most of his followers, there was very few people who learned reading and writing. Just some wealthy people who had time and they had the means and the money to learn to read and write, but most people did not have that advantage. The Arabs were known for memorizing poems just by hearing them. They did not write them down, they just memorized them and read them from their mind. And they did not read as well. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was of this type of person. He was illiterate, as many people were, as we mentioned. So when this being came, told him to read, and his reply was that I cannot read. And this being, he said, hugged him tightly to him, and then let him go, and then told him again, read in the name of your Lord. And he again said that I cannot read, and the being again hugged him tightly, and then left him, and again told him to read in the name of your Lord, and began to say verses of the Quran. And Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said several times, I can't read, and this being had hugged him. But in the end, when the being let him go, he began to recite this Quran. And then this being left, and he was terrified, and he went running back to his home, to his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, asking her to cover me. He was saying, cover me, and she had to cover him with blankets, and he was very afraid. He did not know in the beginning who is this being. And so she reassured him that he was a good person. He took care of the orphans, he took care of the needy people, and she said that God would not leave him. But she took him to the house of her uncle, one of her relatives, who knew about scripture. I think he was a Christian, and he studied the scriptures from the Bible and different books, and he was able to identify that what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ described that he had seen was, as he said, the same being who'd come down to the prophets before him, to Moses and the other prophets, with revelations. And this is who we know is Jibreel, the angel who brings down the revelations. So he identified that, and he said that if he lived long enough, he would follow him. But he did not, unfortunately. So this was confirmed by someone in that time. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had to wait 40 days for the revelation to come again. So it was not in his hands, it was not something he chose, and it was obviously not something he made up, because if someone is going to make up revelation, they can make it up whenever they want. They're not going to have to wait for 40 days for another revelation to come, because they can make it up again after 2 days or whenever they want. So the fact he had to wait means that something was not in his hands. So now I wanted to talk about what some of the Orientalists say about this story. Because when I try to read about this from some of the books that I find in some of the bookshops in London, where they discuss about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and about the revelation and how it began, I just find that they're just giving their ideas as people who don't believe and trying to explain it in a very kind of materialistic Western way that leaves the idea of any revelation or spirituality. So while they say that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a good person, I found that there's different explanations. They don't agree on one of them. Each book seemed to have their own explanation. I found in one book, for example, that he said it was like an epileptic fit. It was like an epileptic seizure thing, and in these times he thought he had the revelation, and he thought he was being visited by someone, and that they were telling him things, but it was actually epileptic fit. And I wonder what epileptic fit brings a big book like the Quran. Has anyone, if there is anyone here who has epilepsy or knows someone who has epilepsy, please could you leave a message and tell us if having epilepsy helps you to write a book, a religious book, and gets a lot of wisdom and knowledge about how to live your life, and gives you insights that you never would have had before, and gives you the ability to come out with a big book that's going to make a big civilization. I have never heard such a thing, and there's no evidence that epilepsy can do such things. In fact, I think it's kind of the opposite. I would imagine, I do not have epilepsy, but I think that if someone has epilepsy, it's going to interrupt them in their abilities and their lives. Maybe it will stop them writing a book or building a big civilization, because when they're trying to do something, they'll have an epileptic fit. So epileptic fits are not something that brings big civilizations or starts a big religion or something. I've never seen evidence for that, and I've never heard of such a thing. It's just a very unscientific idea. And some other claims that I've seen in some of these books, for example, hallucinations. Again, who has hallucinations? Normally we associate hallucinations with mental illnesses such as schizophrenia. So whoever has known about schizophrenia, for myself, I am a graduate in psychology, and I'm now training to be a psychotherapist. So I read up about schizophrenia, and I've worked with people with schizophrenia. People with schizophrenia don't come up with big ideas or books that make a lot of sense, that are guidance to people. They don't come out. One of the issues with schizophrenia, for example, or other hallucinations, is the fact that their thinking processes and their thought processes at the time, they're not normal and they don't make sense. The things that normally we would classify as logic have just stopped. The schizophrenic person may go from one idea to another very quickly, and it's not making any sense for those of us who use our normal standard logic. It doesn't make any sense. And the hallucinations, seeing and hearing things, they're also not making sense. For example, one man, he was telling me that the car outside was parked there and his son is in the car. I know this man had no son. He was not married and he had no son, and there was no car there. So it doesn't make any sense, and you can see straight away that these hallucinations, these delusions, they're just not real. They're not based on reality or fact. So if we have a book like the Quran, where many things, we have many scientists now that confirm things in the Quran, that they are factual and real, this is evidence that it can't have been from someone's hallucination. Because a hallucination is something contrary to reality, contrary to facts. It's not something that it's not something that will argue for reality or what's really there. It's the opposite. A hallucination argues about things that are not there. This is why it's classified as a mental illness, and it's a problem that should be resolved, and people are given medication because of hallucinations. So in that time as well, if Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was hallucinating, I'm sure his wife, I'm sure his close friends and followers, they would have been more concerned for him rather than following him. They would have tried to treat him, and I doubt very much they would have followed him and accepted to make a big religion from that. Because all people in all times, in all eras, all of us, we have intelligence and we have logic. We can see and we can know when someone is ill or not. And we're not going to follow someone who's not well, even if we love them a lot. I mean, even if your mother or your son is hallucinating and saying that they are the big leader of humanity and they're going to bring you to salvation and you'll be okay if you listen to them. When you hear they're not making sense, when you see that they're not talking from reality, what they're saying is not true, you will not follow them. Maybe you will love them, but you will tell people, don't follow this person, he's ill, we have to treat him. And maybe you will pray for him, maybe you want well for him, but you will not follow him, I'm sure. And I mean, if someone does, please let us know in the comments if you have another opinion, but I don't think that people do that. So anyway, that was another argument that I've seen from these books, hallucinations and some sort of mental illnesses. And others are claims that it was from a state of meditation, that he got into such a high state of meditation that means he thought himself to be a prophet ﷺ, and he just went into this state where he was gone away from reality and he was not there mentally. But again, how can someone make this book that's so grounded in facts that scientists have told us that the things in Quran that talk about the mountains, talking about the stages of the fetus in the womb, that talk about so many things, are actually factual and real. I mean, if someone's just in a meditative state, are they going to be coming out with all of these things? And are they going to make a great big civilization and a great religion? I have never heard or seen such things before. So where is this evidence that people can do that? Because I think that a lot of people go into the meditative state and they just feel calm and good. I don't think they come out with any kind of book or religion or way of life or something. So something is very different here, don't you see? Do you agree or not that there's something different here? It's not just a meditative state. This is not something normal to do when you're meditating. And again, how this was something that was throughout the life, after the age of 40. And again, for mental illnesses, normally they would have started when someone's like a teenager or when in their early 20s or by the age of 30. Normally, these kind of mental illnesses are not starting at the age of 40 anyway, if it is a mental illness. And this so-called mental illness, or these kind of problems or mental states or whatever they call them, were going to reoccur throughout his life, and they keep bringing down wisdoms and bringing various religious rulings and telling people how to live their lives and so forth. Yet, the people in the hospitals who are mentally ill or who have mental states, they're not making any sense to anyone. They're talking about things that no one can see, no one can hear, people are not aware of. People who are talking about people living on the moon or having a spacecraft come down to take them, and so forth. They don't come with these great books or civilizations, like I said. If they did, why would we put them in the hospital? They may benefit us then. So these arguments and claims don't make sense. And the last book that I remember spoke about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying just because he was in a meditative state, he thought he was a Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the author tried to claim that this was just a one-off occurrence, and he remained confused. Was he a prophet or not for the rest of his life? And this, of course, is something we know not to be true, because we know throughout his life he was telling people that he was a prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he described different ways the revelation came to him. That sometimes, like for example in this first appearance, the angel, he saw this angel. Other times he said the revelation came like the ringing of a bell. And other times the angel visited him in the form of a man, for example. So in each time the revelation was coming to him in a different way. So it means that it was coming throughout of his life. It was not a one-off occurrence, and he was not confused, was he a prophet or not. He knew that he was a prophet, and he was sure of that. And various narrations tell us that he was disputing with the non-believers, and he insisted that he is Muhammad, the Prophet of Allah, and he wanted to be known as that. And his followers saw a lot of evidence for this at that time through different things. I mean, some of them, they said they saw him being visited by people who they could not explain who they were, for example. The people who just seemed to come from nowhere, and just go nowhere as well, and nobody knew who they were. And or seeing him in a different state with sweat running down his forehead, for example. So his followers saw different things, and of course they would see something that we can't really explain now. For example, I can't really explain what exactly happened because I was not there, but we can take what his followers said, and obviously they saw that there was something real in what he said. This is why they followed him. And this is not a cult mentality, where people just blindly follow someone who's just telling them the world's going to end, so that's it. And normally the cults don't have a huge number of followers, because most people are not going to follow something wrong. Normally people who follow cults, they have maybe some sort of trauma or some kind of background that's actually led them to accept something that's actually not logical. But when there's so many people accepting, and now Islam is a very fast growing religion, and so many people recognize that it has a logic to it. If people did not see that there's logic or some truth in the matter, they would not follow it. I myself, as someone who converted to Islam, saw the logic of the Quran and saw how the Quran talks according to reality, how things really are, and things that cannot be known by people, and on so many different issues. For example, why would a man living in the desert be concerned or have knowledge about the stages of a womb in a woman's uterus, for example? He was illiterate Arab. How would he know, or why would he care, or why would he even have such knowledge? Or talking about a tree in a faraway land, and about the mountains, how they are gripped into the earth, for example. How would he know, and why would he care? People don't normally talk about such things. Human beings if they're going to write a book, normally it's just on one topic. They don't go into all of these different issues, into the past, into the present, into the future, talking about geography and then medicine and so forth. It's not the normal way that a human being speaks. And the other thing that I felt to speak about when it comes to the revelation is that maybe I did not mention this issue about the angel who came to him. Okay, why did this angel hug him? I mean, don't you think that it's kind of strange that if an angel came to give revelation to a prophet, peace be on him, that it would hug him? Why would an angel do that? So I asked one of my teachers, what is the reason why this angel hugged the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him? Wouldn't it be enough to just tell him to read? But the answer was that the angel hugged him because this was to demonstrate that he's really there. And this was actually because, Allah obviously knows that people are going to argue about this. They're going to refuse and say it was his imagination. So to confirm to him himself and to anyone who comes after him and comes with this idea that who is this angel? It's not real. You can't argue with something that's hugging you, because hallucinations normally they're from either your vision, either you see something, or either you hear something. Normally hallucinations don't involve touch, because I think touch is the main sense that confirms the existence of something. This is why if we're not sure about something, we try to touch it. For example, if you're not sure if something is water or not, you'll put your hand and see, is it really water? Is it really there? When people are not entirely sure something is there or not, they try to touch it, because touch confirms that it's real and it's not a hallucination. And secondly, when we have all of our senses confirming something, it really confirms its reality. So like a hallucination, as we know from the books of psychology and medicine and so forth, hallucinations normally occur through one of our senses. For example, someone may see something that's not there, but they're not going to be able to touch it because it's not actually there. And normally people don't hear at the same time that they see a hallucination. So a hallucination might be through seeing, but at the same time they will not hear, maybe. Or maybe I have not heard that someone hears and sees hallucinations at the same time. But they definitely don't have touch. So normally hallucinations are, in one sense, is like we might hear voices, but then we will not see something, or we see something and we don't hear the voices. Or even if someone sees and hears voices, but they will not be able to touch that thing, it will be out of bounds. So the very fact of this hugging is the real confirmation that there was some real being there. Whether you want to argue that it was the angel, or whether you want to argue that it was a bear, whether you want to argue that it was an alien, whether you want to argue whatever you want to argue, it confirms that there was something there. And this is why he was afraid and went running down to his wife. So, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, may Allah be pleased with her as well. Because of course, imagine that you just see this great thing for the first time and it just hugs you. I mean, of course it's going to be scary and unforgettable as well. You will just remember this ever, that this great being that you saw hugged you. And you cannot doubt that it's real because it hugged you. It's just a big confirmation. Yeah, so all of these things, I don't see any argument. What argument can people bring to say that the revelation is not true and it's not from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or he was just mistaken or just imagining? I would like to hear some real arguments or real evidence that someone can bring, because like I mentioned, I've now mentioned the story that he told his followers, and I've explained it in this way, and I've explained what the Orientalists and the people who write about Islam from a non-Muslim perspective say, and I've argued against that. So I wonder what is left that you can say about this. It just seems logical that it was revelation, and that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a prophet. And we know as well that he was known before Islam as the trustworthy one, the person who did not lie, did not cheat people, and was entirely honest and trustworthy, and who made peace between his tribes. He was known as gentle. I mean, even after the revelation came as well. His wife was asked about his character. She said he was a walking Quran. So he not only taught the Quran, he did not just receive the Quran, he tried to give the example of the Quran as well to his followers, to show them how to follow it. So he was the entire embodiment of honesty and integrity in what he was teaching. He was not one of those people who is just telling other people don't lie and don't cheat, and he's just doing whatever he wants. And his wife told us that he did not raise his hand to a woman. He did not raise his hand to anyone except on the battlefield. He was known to be a gentle person. He tried to make peace with people as much as he could, and he encouraged understanding and gentleness in dealing with others. And it's for these reasons that the early Muslims, his early followers, developed such a love for him, because he really put them first and took care of them and stood up for the rights of the poor people, of the oppressed people, of the orphans, and so forth. And he gave as much as he could to his followers. This is what we know, that sometimes, he would not say no to people. This is a habit of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that he would not say no. He would give whatever he had to people, and believed in Allah that He would give him. And even when people were rough with him, for example, there's one narration that one of the Bedouins came and they pulled at his cloak, so that it kind of pulled at his neck, and told him to give them something. And he just kind of lightly laughed about this. He did not get annoyed about these things. And he forgave the people who'd done things to him and others in the end as well. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he actually taught us about love and gentleness, and to be good and kind to our neighbors, whatever their religion, whoever they are, and to treat women well, and to treat the poor well, and orphans, and so forth. Now, for this reason, he was loved by people even before Islam came. I mean, we know that his wife proposed to him because she saw his character was this way. And we see later that other women also offered themselves to him later on as well. And some of them, maybe, not all of them he accepted to marry. There was one of his followers who said as well, he came because he was against Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he hated him in the beginning because he thought he'd brought a religion that was disrupting the Arab tribes and causing problems. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not order him to be killed or anything like that. He just ordered for him to be tied up in the mosque. And so he was tied up in the mosque, and Prophet Muhammad ﷺ just walked past him several times, and each time he asked him, have you changed your mind? Have you changed something? And each time this man would say no in the beginning. But he said he saw the dealings of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and how he was with his followers, and in the end he started to feel a love towards him. In the end he accepted Islam as well, and then he was set free. So we can see that there was a special character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his dealings with his followers that actually made them really love him and really esteem him, so much so that they were willing to actually give their lives to protect him in any way. On the battlefield, there were people offering their babies to shield him from the enemy. I'm not saying that that was a wise thing to do, but that was the extent of their love for him. People were giving up their own lives because of their love for him, because he put others first. He gave up his time and his life to teach others good and to encourage others to do good and to treat others well. And he took care of his followers, like I said. He would make sure that they had that they were safe and they had enough food and clothes and so forth. And he would try his best to provide for people who came to him and asked for things. So, regarding us nowadays, it makes sense that people in that time might have had a strong love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But people in our time, people may argue that why would we have such a love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We have not actually seen him. We've only read about the Quran. We've read the Quran. But how did we get this love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? If you ask many Muslims, they will tell you that they love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and some of them, they see him in their dreams. They do Salat on Nabi. They hope to see him in their dreams. They hope to see him on the Day of Judgment. So what makes people love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam now and defend him from these cartoons and bad claims that he was a tyrant and other attacks? I think that this has kind of been passed down, maybe, from generations, from the time of the early followers who really loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They taught each of us that love. But I think as well that I know for myself, when I was trying to learn about who was this Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was he, and what is his significance? When people were telling me the stories of his life, I started to see that he has a life and a story that's similar to other prophets of Islam. For example, Prophet Jesus, Moses. Maybe because I was a Christian, I used to focus on Jesus. So I guess for me, I saw a lot of similarities between Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Jesus, but you could also find them between himself and Abraham, peace be upon him, because he is also a main prophet of Islam, and I think there's a lot of similarities between them. And I think all of them, they all were gentle people. They were all kind people. They wanted good for humanity and for people. So I think for all of these reasons, this kind of character, this kind of person that doesn't give up, they have this patience, and they have this caring nature that they want to do good for people, for society and for the world, and put other people first, and they're willing to stand up for what they believe, and they're patient. They don't give up when people are abusing them and harming them and doing all kinds of things, and they forgive people. This is a very kind of attractive character, and is someone who will make us love them. And I guess for myself, when I saw the similarities between the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Jesus, this made me feel closer to him. But also I was very impressed by his gentle manners, like I was just describing. I remember someone telling me the story about how one of his followers, they took the eggs of a bird from the bird's nest, and they brought it to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he asked his follower, "Why did you take these eggs?" Because I think he did not intend to eat them or something. He just took them like that. for whatever reason. He told him to put these eggs back because the mother of this bird will come and be worried. She will worry where is her offspring. So he was so concerned, not just for the human beings but for the animals. Don't upset the animals as well without reason. And he had this empathy even with this bird. And I think for me this very impressed me, that this kind of kindness and empathy, we don't find that now, right? So if you find that in someone, isn't that a good reason that you would love them, and that you don't want people to speak badly about them or abuse them in some way, I guess. And not only that, when we know how he dealt with people who'd done bad things, when I say bad things, not great crimes, but they've made some mistakes that even in our time they're going to be severely punished for that. For example, there's one narration when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw a Bedouin in the mosque. This Bedouin started to pee in the mosque. He was urinating in the mosque, and as we know, the mosque is a place to worship God. So it's not a place for urinating. But anyway, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam prevented his followers from stopping this man from peeing in the mosque at that time, because he said, leave him to finish his pee. Maybe this doesn't make sense to many people, because in our time they would straight away force someone to stop and just get out, and probably just throw them out and not allow them back again, and maybe throw many things on top of them too. But he did not allow his followers to stop him, because he said, maybe you cause him harm. For example, if someone's in the middle of urinating and you scare them, maybe you'll cause them damage. Maybe they won't be able to finish, to release all that they want to release, for example. So it might cause them some damage or something. So he told them, wait till he's finished. And then after he had finished, he did not shout at the man, and he did not throw him out of the mosque. He just spoke to him gently that this mosque is a place of worship, it's not a place to relieve yourself, for example. And then he ordered his followers to throw water on the place. So this was a very gentle and very wise way to deal with this situation, which also impressed me a lot, because most people don't deal with people in that way. They'll just shout and throw them out and just really abuse them in some way. And also another narration that I remember too is when a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I want to do zina. Zina is adultery. He wants to have a relationship with a woman he's not married to. And this is not allowed in Islam. And I think it's not allowed in Christianity and various other belief systems or religions too. So this man came and said he wanted to have this relationship that's not allowed with a woman. He wanted to have a relationship with a woman he's not married to. There's no relationship between them. And he told him that directly, that he wants this. So some of the companions began to get angry with this man. And they start to say things. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stopped them. And he just replied in a very gentle and wise way and told him, would you like this? Would you like it if someone did that to your mother? The man replied, no. He asked him, would you like someone to do that to your sister? He replied, no. Would you like someone to do that to your daughter? He did not like it. And then he made dua, he prayed for him that he would be chaste, be pure, and that he would get rid of this desire to commit adultery. So this man said, after that, adultery was the most hated thing to me. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not abuse him, and he did not say, you bad man. He did not attack him. He just used gentle logic and just asked him, would you like somebody else to do that to someone you know? and that's all it was. So this kind of personality, this kind of way of dealing with people, I think that it's one of the big reasons why we love Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam so much, and it's a very attractive way of dealing with people. I feel sad as well that many Muslims, many of us, don't follow this way of dealing with people as well. Many people, they try to follow Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in things like praying or using the toothstick, for example, or even dress, but they don't try to take these character traits. They don't try to instigate in themselves these character traits of gentleness and good treatment of others, and how to deal with people in the wise way, in a way that's not going to harm them, and deal with people in a way that's going to make them listen to them and also feel good in themselves. Without breaking someone's heart, without breaking someone's making them feel bad, because most people will make someone feel bad. They'll make them feel bad for urinating in the mosque. They'll make them feel bad for even thinking about committing adultery. They'll make them feel bad for many things. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he treated people in the most human way. So doesn't he deserve this kind of respect and love of Muslims? I think so as well. In fact, I think even for people who are not Muslims, they are able to respect this kind of person and love them too, because as I think Bernard Shaw, he said about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he was one of the greatest of leaders. He put him as the number one leader. So I mean, even for people who don't accept, for whatever reason, don't want to accept that he was a prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at least accept that he was a great human person that that needs some sort of respect and good treatment. And if we look to him and if we followed him, we'll be a lot better than we are, and we'll be guided. I mean, he gave his life for people to be guided as well. So these are some of the reasons, and I thought that I should mention as well, I mean, obviously there are spiritual reasons, I think, because I think when people believe in the Quran and they believe in Allah, they have some sort of spiritual kind of connections or something, because I felt at times some strange feeling. I know that maybe it sounds strange to people who don't have some sort of spiritual side to them, but it's strange that you can miss someone that you've never seen and that you've never had contact with. But at times I've had the feeling of missing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, and this is without seeing him and without being in the place where he is. I have not the people, obviously the Sahabas and the people of his early followers, for them, when he passed away, they did miss him terribly. But there are people now in our time that also feel this missing. And this is something strange that I think you don't normally feel for someone that you've never seen or never known. But I think that maybe it's because as well, we have so much, because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us so much information about himself. We know about his life in detail because he did not leave it private. He left it for us to be an example. So we kind of know him from that. And from this, I guess, the love of him is coming from that we know him very well, even though we did not see him. We know about his life. And when we read the Quran, we're able to know how he was, because his wife said that he was a walking Quran. So the Quran confirms that how he was. And I guess This is how we know him, and from this comes the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I guess from this, many Muslims, they don't want to accept people to attack the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they want to defend him, and they have strong feelings for him, even though they did not see him, because we feel that we know him. So I don't know if anyone is listening to this and they have more comments, they have more things they want to add, or they have some things they want to ask about, or some question about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or something they want to share, please do. And I hope this has been helpful as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.